It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Rene, Ritchie, Lory, Gil, and a special guest join us. Rich Siegel of Bare Bones Software, the creator of BBEdit, is here. We're going to ask Rich a lot of questions, including why BBEdit left the App Store and now is back. We'll talk about that weird notarization thing, what to expect at WWDC, and a post-mortem on the Apple Qualcomm settlement. That and a whole lot more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 658, recorded Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019. $1 billion. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Capterra. Find the right tools to make an informed software decision for your business. Capterra is software selection simplified. Visit Capterra's free website at capterra.com/MacBreak. And by Gazelle, the trusted online marketplace for buying and selling used devices. Visit gazelle.com/twit to buy a certified pre-owned device and get 10% off your purchase. And by FreshBooks, the ridiculously easy-to-use invoicing and accounting software. If you don't believe me, try it free for 30 days at freshbooks.com/MacBreak. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Apple. Rene, Ritchie in the flood zone, but he's still doing the show. You are a trooper, Rene.
Couldn't keep me away, Leo. All the chaos outside goes away because of the order.
It's nice.
and glory in here. Yeah.
Well, and you didn't even do vector, so I mean that's saying a lot.
No, it's just there's sirens that keep going off, and they keep telling us like we had to move our cars to a civil parking lot across the street, and now a high school 2 blocks away, and then there's just things just keep happening, and I didn't have enough time to do it.
But the good news is your place is safe. It's above the flood.
Yes, the neighbors on the left and the neighbors on the right are screwed.
Yikes.
So far, okay.
And the other good news is Vector hit 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Yay, congratulations.
Yay, well
and so
done.
many of them are MacBreak listeners. I really appreciate it. It's
nice.
Phenomenal.
Yay. Yeah. Andy Ihnatko is also here from the WGBH, Boston Public Radio. Nice to have you,
there.
Andrew.
I'm only trapped in the flood of my own self-pity. So I can't compete.
Or tears, one or the other. And Lory Gil is here. Great to have you. We actually have a big audience today. Managing editor at iMore. Hi, Lory.
Hi. Am I allowed to complain about the weather here? Because the tree allergies are really bothering
it's so hot and sunny.
It never changes.
The weather is so great.
The allergies
here.
are bad. We are in the height of the allergy season because we had a very wet winter, and as a result, all the grasses, everything's blooming, and it is bad.
I basically feel like I have ants crawling inside my nose and my throat all day long.
I'm so glad I don't have allergies. I don't know how I avoided that. I think it's just my body has no resistance. It just says, come on in.
And then it's no fun, so they leave you alone.
Come on, pollen. Let's all have a party in Leo's nose.
Yeah, someday you're just going to cough and a big wad of pollen's going to fall out.
Oh, God. Now I want allergies. And a special guest today, Rich Siegel, is here from Bare Bones Software, the creator of BBEdit. Hello, Rich.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
It's good to see you.
It is actually a lovely day out here in southern New England. It stopped raining for about 5 minutes, and all the buds on all the trees have exploded. So,
is that a pan tilt zoom camera over your left shoulder there? What is that?
It is. That's a Foscam birdie cam that I use.
Oh, it's a bird cam. I should have known.
It's actually focused on the bird cages.
But you can look around and see where they've gone if they move.
Yes, I can do that. I can also check in on them when I'm out of the house.
Nice.
Make sure they're
not in trouble.
Well, they're never not in trouble, but make sure they're at least temporarily behaving themselves.
Plotting to take over.
So later in the show, I want to talk to you a little bit about BBEdit, which is now, I'm thrilled, available on the App Store. And I'm sure there's limits about what you can talk about, but I'd love to know the process of all that. Because it took from the time Apple said it was going to happen to now quite a while.
Yeah, the announcement was made at the developers conference a
year ago.
June, yeah. So yeah, we've been working on it pretty steadily since then. I'd say it's about as much work as went into any major upgrade of the application. So yeah, there are certainly things that I'm not at liberty to say, but I'll be happy to talk about whatever I can.
Good.
I think that you should just stalwart the entire conversation that you're not at liberty to say anything ever.
I don't recall. What was the question?
I decline to answer the question on the grounds that it may tend to incriminate me.
There you go. Plead the fifth. Let's start, though, in the courtroom, which something that broke during the show last week. And so now we've had a week to chew it over. Apple and Qualcomm buried the hatchet the day after jury was impaneled. The trial had actually begun. Apple had made its opening statements, and then boom. And then very shortly thereafter, Intel said, "Oh, by the way, we're getting out of the 5G modem business." Coincidence?
Correlation? Causation?
Well, somebody asked a question on Twitter, which was reasonable, was when did Intel make that determination? After the Qualcomm settlement or before? And in other words, did it precipitate the Qualcomm settlement? Did Apple say, did Mr. Intel call Mr. Apple and say, yeah, this isn't going to work? And Mr.
Don't
Apple
you love
then
how
said,
Intel said in the thing, we could still make them if we wanted to.
But we don't want to.
Well, Qualcomm is the one you got to beat, and they are entrenched, and they have really, really great technology there. And Intel was always going to have an uphill battle, and that battle was going to be helped if Apple became a major buyer, and or if Qualcomm had a major defeat that allowed other lawsuits and antitrust suits they've got against them to become stronger and stronger. And once they saw the cards on the table, they decided that none of this looks very good. Let's get out while the getting's good. They have to have had some indication, either eyes in the courtroom or some back channel thing, that they knew this was not going to go well for Apple one way or another. I think Apple also, the fact that they folded in one day also indicates that they knew that either late in the game or earlier that this was not going to go their way.
The opening arguments were strange. Like they brought up Kentucky Fried Chicken and whether you get the potatoes and the chicken, of what your expectation is. And they were all sorts of really like folksy analogies
so that's the lawyers. That's the lawyers. That's the Apple lawyers saying, "Oh God, this jury's not going to understand a word."
The KFC was the Qualcomm lawyers.
Qualcomm.
Apple had I forget. Apple had an equally absurd analogy though. It was just on both sides. And my feeling in all of this is that they've known no one's really going to win this for a long time, and Qualcomm has to be careful too, because most regulators hate a monopoly. It's why Intel licenses to AMD. It's why Microsoft gave money to Apple. You never want to be alone in the market. You always want some level of competition or some level of a detachment that shows that you're being a good corporate citizen. And Apple wanted really, really low rates. Qualcomm did not want to give them those rates. They didn't want to threaten their business model. Apple wanted Intel as sort of a hedge against Qualcomm, but Apple ended up having to do so much of the engineering on their own that they might as well have not, I guess, had an Intel to begin with. And I think it just got to a point where Apple made a calculation. Enough decisions didn't go their way, but sort of the FTC looked like it might, but that was a ways out. And they really needed to get their phones in order to ship. And so Qualcomm gave them a couple points off, nowhere nearly as much as they wanted to, probably a couple more than Qualcomm wanted to, and they decided to get the deal done. And it saves every one of their executives having to go up on those stands and say things that nobody wants those executives to have
Tim
to say.
Cook would have had to testify. That's one reason Apple didn't probably want to go on. Although what's weird is everything that you just described was known long before the jury was impaneled. What was the sudden timing of this? Was it?
Probably
that's
the
why I think
negotiation.
Intel's saying, maybe the negotiations continued this whole time, or
it was all signed on April 1st was when the agreements are all ratified for, and it could have just been they didn't get everything buttoned up until
okay.
Day.
Okay, so in other words, almost 2 weeks before the trial began, they had an agreement.
So like I said, Intel could have had a back channel to know that this was in place. But also the Washington Post had a reporter in the room. And I don't think that the presentations of the first day have been unsealed yet. But again, they had a reporter in the room, and they have a really good piece showing what Apple's legal strategy was. The Qualcomm, they're trying to make the point that to the jury, again, maybe trying to be the folksy country lawyer. Well, I don't know much about no baseband chips. What I do know was that in an open marketplace, they're showing off that, hey, here's a huge pile of patents that we bought that are similar to Qualcomm's, but they even though it's a gajillion patents and they're costing about a fraction of what we were paying for Qualcomm's few patents. And is that fair? And the reporter said, well, was able to look at this and say, yeah, but Apple was strategically buying super cheap patents that have absolutely no relevance to Qualcomm to make that argument. They also Qualcomm got access to like internal discussions and internal presentations of Apple about their strategy. I'm going to quote, I had to highlight this one because the purpose of their product was spelled out clearly, quote, goal, reduce Apple's net royalty to Qualcomm. Apple said in the document it planned to accomplish this in several ways, including, quote, hurt Qualcomm financially, unquote, and, quote, put Qualcomm's licensing model at risk, unquote. So that's a
smoking gun.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Also, admissions internally, Apple's own admissions internally, that Qualcomm technology was superior, while in public they were saying, oh, it's inferior.
Yeah, I found it. Apple said that when you buy Coke, you shouldn't have to give 10% to Pepsi. That was their big analogy against and Qualcomm's was when you buy chicken, you should have to pay separately for the potatoes. You don't get the potatoes for free.
It seems to me that this is a damning indictment of the jury system when it comes to high-tech lawsuits. Like, if we have to dumb it down that far, we need better juries.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no such thing as the tech jury that you have to be, like well-versed in 5G modems in order to be able to sit on the jury so that you can understand what they're talking about.
I have to wonder, though, if the agreements are April 1st, I mean, why be so blistering in your arguments initially if you know you're about to settle? It seems to me that these attorneys in the courtroom did not know that a settlement was imminent. No, they didn't.
Apparently only a very, very small amount of people in all those companies knew, and a tiny subset of those knew the full extent of the deal.
Oh, interesting. Well, why did they delay it?
It probably is as simple as negotiating all the thing, because they came to very specific rate. Apple is paying less, nowhere nearly as less as they want to pay, but they did get a slightly better rate. And I saw a bunch of analysis from Ben Beharin and just the usual people on what this costs. And there was disagreement. Like, some people thought they wanted $5 per product, but ended up closer to $7. Others thought they wanted $6, ended up closer to $8. So I think we're going to have to wait till a lot more comes out. But in one sense, absolutely everybody won here. And the nice thing from an Apple user's point of view is that we'll be getting Qualcomm modems again, which is way better in many areas than Intel modems. If you're just dripping in signal, it won't matter to you. But if you're in any area that has any problems whatsoever, it's great news for you. And Apple got a license. Apple didn't just get the chips; they got the license, which was part of the bickering here. Is why do we have to buy the license if we're buying the chips? But in Apple's case, if you look at what they did with ARM, which was to license the designs until they were making their own designs and then just license the IP, that could be very similar with Qualcomm. They're licensing the chips for now as Apple's own modem efforts increase, and then in 2 years, 3 years, they switch to the Apple whatever M series modem, and it's using all of Qualcomm's IP for the technology.
Reed Albergati of the Washington Post, who was in the room, wrote, at Tuesday's trial, Apple argued that it was like paying twice and likened it to buying Kentucky Fried Chicken, then being charged an extra for a license for all the methods and spices that went into cooking the chicken. Yeah. Qualcomm argued that neither of these is apt. Qualcomm argued that the bundle of technology patents includes not just the chip technology, but myriad wireless tech that Apple needs in its iPhones. Apple was asking to pay for its chicken and get a side of potatoes for free, which I believe does happen. But
yeah, that's the whole thing is so bizarre, because you usually do get the side.
I don't usually pay separate.
But they still charge you for an extra thing of dipping sauce. How is that right?
That's wrong. Yeah, when if the trial had gone on, we might have heard arguments about dipping sauce. But
Rich is so happy he's in Bits and not Atoms right now.
Wow.
Yeah, the hardware business is really pretty nasty.
Yeah, but I have to say, I mean, software gets patent encumbered all the time, and remember Microsoft indemnifying Linux users, saying, well, we have all the Linux patents, but if you promise to give us money, we won't sue you. I mean, software has the same problem, doesn't it, Rich?
Sometimes it can, yes. It's not uncommon for specific pieces of software technology to have patents applied for or granted.
Do you use other people's? Do you pay licenses for any of your technologies?
We don't.
Do it all homegrown.
It's almost all homegrown. There's a couple of little things here and there which are open sourced, and they're either MIT licensed or BSD licensed or GNU licensed with a linking exemption. If you look in our About box, there's a list of
you'll see it all. Yeah,
and anything that we're using that is under license. We have used commercially licensed libraries in the past. I think most software developers will tell you they prefer to avoid royalties.
Yeah.
And we do too.
Yeah, of course. But on the other hand, almost all software is developed using libraries from other sources. That's why open source is such a boon, really, to innovation.
It is in some ways. In other ways, it's turning out to have significant downsides in the form of dependencies, unpredictable changes, lifetime concerns, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You start using a piece of code and then the developer or maintainer loses interest in supporting it, and all of a sudden you're stuck with something that is not just static, but also not fit for purpose anymore, and you're back where you started.
It happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a nightmare. You develop with Xcode and Apple's either Objective-C or Swift?
We're using Apple's tools. It's Objective-C, C++, some old school basic C code in there as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're targeting Mac OS or any of Apple's platforms, you're almost certainly using Apple's tools. You sort of have to.
Apple does a good job, I think, with its tools of not introducing new versions that break old code, although Swift is still kind of in development, I think.
Swift is very much a moving target. Apple's put a tremendous amount of effort into maintaining source compatibility. ABI compatibility was very important for them as well.
What's that?
They've done a good job there. So ABI refers to application binary interface, and it is sort of loosely speaking the runtime environment in which the software runs. So ABI has to do with how function calls work, and it's very important for library compatibility. So if you're using libraries built against the same ABI, no problem. But if you're using libraries built against differing ABIs, you have a big problem.
Yeah.
And so Apple has done a lot of work to maintain stability there, and it's to their credit. Swift has been rapidly growing, a real moving target. The word from Apple last year at WWDC was that Swift 5 is coming, and if I recall correctly, they were going to be putting the Swift standard libraries into the Core OS. That's a public announcement. I'm not giving up any secrets here. And when that happens, that's a huge step forward for stability. It's a very strong message from Apple saying, yes, the standard libraries are in the OS. They are stable. They're not moving.
You can count on them.
You can count on them.
Yeah. It's something you guys think about all the time, but we don't as users think about. But it's the same problem in Microsoft Windows, where they call it DLL hell, where you have multiple C library DLLs, different versions, different apps use different versions. It can really become a nightmare.
Yeah, it sure can, especially where third-party libraries are involved. And that's one of the reasons that everything we use, even if it is open source, we build from source.
That makes sense. So that way you know the version and you know what's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is the big loser in this Apple Qualcomm thing Intel?
They were saying before the settlement.
Go ahead, Rene, and then Lory.
They were saying before the settlement that this was not a financially viable enterprise for them, and they were
Apple kind of strong-armed him
to prioritize it and to give them low prices on it. And the new CEO, the brand new CEO, was saying that it probably wasn't an area they wanted to focus on. So they did hedge by saying they want to keep making 5G for Internet of Things and for enterprise, but it seemed like this was an albatross off their neck.
Lory, go ahead.
That was pretty much what I was going to say, that they had said that it was a little too much for them to handle, that they felt a little pressure from Apple. I think if I recall, Intel's stock also skyrocketed right after this announcement too. So I think there was a lot of speculation that the 5G modem business was really going to be a burden on Intel, and now that they don't have it, they can they're free to do a lot of other things and kind of push forward with their other projects.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat room, Gardner, is saying the big loser is the customer long term because of lack of competition.
I don't know. How many brands of salt do you need to have on the shelf of a grocery store? The thing is that the reason why Qualcomm is the king here is not necessarily because of their anti-competitive practices, whatever they are, but the fact that it's just a damn good baseband. They know how to do this. They've had enough experience with it that if you put a Qualcomm chip inside your device, you know that it's going to work, as Rene said, not just where you have wonderful coverage, but also when you have spotty coverage, and also where you have networks that aren't really terribly modern and are still using old technologies. Or if you're living in a valley with Godzilla on the other side of the mountain, a Qualcomm chip will probably be able to find you a signal and give you good bit rates. Other companies have looked at that crocodile-infested swamp and said, we don't want to get in there. We would much rather have the crocodile hunter give us the thing we need from that swamp. So I would be more concerned about the lack of choice, whatever that is, to consumers, if I saw something that said that here's something that Qualcomm could be doing that they aren't doing. Right now, the only place where it's hurting consumers is the $7.50 per handset they're charging Apple for use of their technology. And it's not as though Apple has ever been terribly concerned about saving consumers $7.50 anywhere.
Well, when you save consumers $7.50, you lower the price of the phone. And I know Apple's concerned about
Apple would keep that. Apple would just put it right in their pocket. They're not going to lower the price.
Okay. So it doesn't save consumers any money. It's kind of interesting. It does sort of relate to the software library conversation. Essentially, these chips are like software libraries. They're components that Apple has to use to make the iPhone. Are they going to? So here's the question: in the next generation iPhone coming out this fall, will they continue to have Intel LTE modems? They will.
Yes.
But now they can get Qualcomm parts.
I think they're going to start that next year with the 5G phones. I mean, presuming that 5G actually rolls out the way everyone expects it to.
Because Qualcomm was withholding their parts from Apple.
Yeah, but Huawei kindly offered to sell Apple modems instead.
Yeah.
Well, now Huawei, it's interesting because now, according to some sources, the CIA is telling people Huawei is actually taking money from the Chinese government and is as close to the Chinese government as you can get. And kind of, there'd been this kind of noise from the U.S. administration and intelligence that, well, you shouldn't be using Huawei. We won't use Huawei, and we're trying to tell our allies not to use Huawei. But they finally are going around saying, look, here's what's really happening. This is a Chinese government enterprise in effect. So Huawei's out too.
Yeah. And they were optimized for the Chinese market anyway. They would have to do work to optimize for the extra Chinese market.
No, we're not going to get... Apple's never been the first to do anything. They're not going to do 5G in the fall. We've already...
No.
Next year.
You think as soon as next year?
Well, so the Thunderbolt, the HTC Thunderbolt hit in January of 2011, if memory serves. And it wasn't until September of 2012 that Apple did the iPhone 5. Which was their first LTE phone. So they were about 18 months behind. And we just had the 5G Galaxy S10 hit to where it's hitting roundabout now. So if you look out, end of next year will probably be the same amount of time. And they typically just want to get the second generation parts, because the first generation parts, you lose a lot of efficiency because the 5G part's actually a separate chip. Qualcomm makes a lot of their money by just offering the Snapdragon SoC with everything nicely packaged in, but the 5G radios are big. You have to have 4 different sides of RF transparency to get the signal, because it's all those millimeter signals going in there. And that means that area of space can't be used by batteries, so you end up having slightly smaller battery capacity unless you make the phone bigger. It's all the same things that the HTC Thunderbolt had that made it the first LTE phone with a battery that lasted an hour and a half. And Apple wants cooler chips, next generation chips that are smaller, more efficient, all those things. And they should have those by the end of next year.
We speculated last week, and of course it was a rushed thing because we just heard about the settlement, that the deal that Apple made with Qualcomm was for 5 years with an option for 2 more. So we speculated that really is telling you the time frame for Apple's own house-designed chips to replace.
Yeah, if they thought they could get this up and running in less than 6 years, they wouldn't have made a deal like that. Unless they wanted to keep some irons in the fire, there might be the first year that they do 5G with their own. They want to use their own chips. They might decide to make it sort of like how you could buy a phone, but you don't know whether you're going to get the Qualcomm or the Intel chip. It could be that there's going to be some people are not going to be aware that they are sort of beta testing Apple's new chip fab for baseband, and we'll see how well that works. But yeah, that's clearly a sign of how difficult the problem is going to be for Apple to get this done. And everything that Rene said, absolutely spot on. And Apple, unlike Android phone makers, is in a really great position where they really don't have any need to rush, because no one's going to be making a competing iPhone that has 5G before Apple makes one. And to top off all of that, 5G is going to take a couple of years to get built up to the point where the major airport hub cities are all going to be covered by 5G. That's not going to happen for at least until 2020, I think, where it's something where people with a 5G phone will notice that, hey, I'm getting a true 5G signal, not the phony baloney Fisher Price 5G signal off my AT&T phone.
It's funny because according to the Mobile Economy Report, which was released at Mobile World Congress, in the next 6 years, by 2025, only 15% of the global mobile industry will run on 5G technology. In the U.S., it'll be a little bit higher, maybe 30%. But that's 6 years from now. It's not like 5G is imminent.
Yeah.
No, it's a premium technology and Apple works in the premium space. And if and when they do make their own modems, they would almost certainly have to license from Qualcomm anyway, or face the mother of all lawsuits. So this just kind of neatly packages up everything together.
What do you bet, though, that somewhere in that long document that they just agreed to, there's something about that?
I think it's exactly like ARM. Like they're gonna license the design until they can license the IP and make their own design.
Yeah, but I'm sure Apple as part of this, made an agreement. Yeah. Okay, this is what you're going to charge. This is what it's going to be.
Well, they got both. Yeah, they got both. They got the technology license and the chip license.
Right.
Yeah. And it's really, for 5G, it really is about San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle, Boston, Atlanta. Basically, if you get 10 hub cities in the United States, that's not as good as having the entire country covered. But in terms of the people who are spending $800 to $1,000, maybe $2,000 for a folding phone, which might actually work in 2 years' time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really what you have to do to make those people happy. So,
although Apple's never, the first iPhone was 2G.
Yeah.
And
didn't have apps 3G. And didn't have cut and paste. Yeah.
and as I remember, I may be wrong, but in 2007, everybody had access to 3G. It was globally available, right? I think so. I had 3G phones. So
3G was good enough for my grandparents. I don't see what the problem is.
They were on GRPS and they liked it. 1RX, what was it? 1RXTT? I forgot what the Verizon version was.
By the way, Sprint has ended its lawsuit against AT&T for the use of 5G enhanced.
It's too bad. They should keep that going.
I wonder why. Maybe they just said, what are we doing here? And AT&T will get to continue to use the 5G enhanced label in that settlement. So I think it's really...
That's a proud day.
Yeah, proud day.
Proud day for AT&T.
Proud day. We get to continue to fool consumers.
They're going to be up there in the Hall of Fame, right next to the first guy who said, "But if we spell it Cheez, it doesn't matter. There's no real cheese in this."
Let's take a break. WWDC is coming up. It's just around the corner, and Rich, we have a tame developer in house, so we'll ask Rich Siegel what he expects to see at WWDC. Lots more too. Great panel. It's nice. Sometimes it's fun to have a big panel. Really appreciate all of you being here today. Our show brought to you by Capterra. If you're in business, it's notorious line of business software for being out of date, old, janky, written by somebody who was an employee years ago and has disappeared, undocumented, It happens all the time. That's why people still use Windows XP and Internet Explorer 8, because they have business software that requires it. Maybe it's time to move on and start using modern software. There's great software for almost every business, for almost every need, and Capterra is the place to find it. They have 700 categories of business software: CRM, IT, project management, e-commerce, link management tools, web conferencing. But even, kind of that basic line of business software like dog groomer management software or parrot camera software, that kind of thing. If you're in business and you're using old funky software, go to capterra.com/MacBreak. Not only will you find all the software, its design is so easy. You pick a category. Go ahead, pick anything there. How about auto dealer software? And then you can say there's a whole checklist of pricing options. You have different filters. Are you a new car dealer, used car dealer? Do you want to keep track of documents, financing? You want to do lease? You check the features you want, and you're going to build a list. You're going to filter it down and build a list of programs that match your exact needs, and then you can set up a comparison chart and look side by side. But the best part is Capterra has, and this number goes up all the time, over 850,000 verified reviews of those products. There are 30,000 new reviews every month. So you're going to, not only do you get to compare these for yourself, but you can see what actual people using the software say about it. This is so huge. You can filter by product rating, the number of users, deployment, all the features, compare them side by side up to 4 at a time. You even get a list of related categories for further options. No matter what kind of software you use in your business, there's no need to use that old stuff that runs on Vista. Capterra makes it easy to discover the right solution fast. No, I'm sorry. You have to be using a PowerPC processor to run our program. No! Once you find that perfect software, leave a review. Share your knowledge with other buyers. Knowledge is power, and that's what Capterra is all about. Now, when I tell people about Capterra, they say, oh, that's great. How much is it? I'd pay $50 a month for that. It's fantastic. No, it's free. Free. Like, it's never going to cost you anything. It's a free website. Millions of people use it every month. I just want everybody to know about it. Capterra, CAPTERRA.com/MacBreak. Capterra.com/MacBreak. Stop suffering with old software. Go to capterra.com/MacBreak and find the right tools for your business. From accounting to zookeeping, Capterra is software selection simplified. And we thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. Rich Siegel, do you have a podcast? You ought to have a podcast.
I don't have a podcast. Everybody talks about podcasts, and I go and I look, and there's no podcasts at the grocery store, so I don't have a podcast.
But there is Eclipse coffee syrup.
Yes, there is.
I can't remember. Are you an Eclipse guy?
I am an Eclipse user.
Okay.
The
user, that's really the right term.
Yeah. Although there is a shameful secret that Eclipse and Autocrat are now produced by the same outfit.
Ah! So I was talking
Disney.
to Mom earlier on iOS Today. She's from Providence, and we were talking about Eclipse and Autocrat and coffee milk. She says, my milkman delivers it. So,
Wow.
A, she's got a milkman. What? And B, they deliver coffee milk. That's Providence, Rhode Island, ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell.
That is modern
We're all moving
civilization right there.
Yeah, that's right. When they start delivering podcasts, when the milkman starts coming with a packet of podcasts, then.
I got your pack of Twitch shows right here.
Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a podcast. I sort of feel like occasionally I guest on others' podcasts, and that seems
solves
to stretch the
Take
limits
one of
of
Jason
audience.
Snell's. He's got a dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Rich, you're an underachiever here.
I'm a slacker, a loser.
Actually, those of us who use BBEdit are very grateful that you spend your energies in an appropriate arena, making BBEdit better all the time. The reason I ask is there's a new, and I'm curious, because everybody else on this panel is a podcaster in one form or fashion, about this new program, Luminary, which is a podcast app, $100 million in venture funding.
Oh, that'll end well.
It launches today. The New York Times has kept the daily off Luminary. Gimlet has kept reply all off Luminary. Not because Luminary isn't a standard podcast app, it is, but because they're going to also have a paid category, and they foolishly tweeted a bunny saying podcasts don't need ads. That's not good for ad-based podcasting. Yeah. We're not going to take that step of saying, oh, we don't want to be on Luminary. We want to be anywhere you want to be. But nor are we going to do paid exclusives with any company either.
All you need is a deal with $100 million startup.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
Dream.
What about the Leo Song and Dance Hour? I mean, we've been waiting.
So here's the question. Would you pay $8 a month to get so one of the things they're going to do, and I think Spotify's going to do this too, I would guess now that they bought Gimlet for a huge amount of money, is they'll have podcasts that you can't get on any other player, and they'll be ad-free. Trevor Noah's going to do a show.
Plus, Leo.
Yeah. $8, but will people pay $8 a month for exclusive access to Lena Dunham's podcast or Trevor Noah's podcast? Maybe they will.
I think that there are a lot of people out there who are very passionate about podcasts and are probably pretty excited about the idea of getting some special exclusives with some big celebrities. It seems weird since we've been getting our podcasts for free for so long, but there's lots of podcasts that you can pay to get access to their old stuff or something like that. So this is just a bigger version that's a broader spectrum. So I think there's definitely going to be a lot of people excited to pay for, especially when they can get exclusive content or back-end content that maybe isn't available through the other podcast platforms that, they're just not uploaded anymore. I think that's probably really good. So a lot of it will depend on the features available. But if they're providing good features, people will pay for that. There's some real passionate podcast listeners out there.
Yeah, and fans of particular people. And if the only way you can hear them, I think of Howard Stern. People pay a lot of money to SiriusXM so that they can hear the Howard Stern show.
Yeah, but keep in mind that he built this huge worldwide audience off of free radio.
Oh, that's true.
He was already a superstar when he got there. I wonder what that's going to do for discovery. Like how there's so many podcasts where I don't become a fan until I've sampled maybe 8 or 9 episodes over the course of a few months, and then suddenly it's one of these shows that I don't want to miss. I'm not sure if I would pay in advance, even if it's just a monthly fee for everything, to see, well, I want to at least hear what Trevor Noah's new podcast sounds like, and then find out that, well, it's okay, but if I'm also watching his nightly show, I don't feel like there's anything new there. And plus, there's going to be 10 other shows from people I've never heard of who don't have a national platform already that are going to be as fun for me that I might have through that other show. So I don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah.
If it keeps some people afloat, I think that's a good thing, but I don't know how that's going to help discovery.
Are they offering any kind of free? Oh yeah, so 1 month for free. So yeah. Really, it sounds a lot like Apple's TV Plus
or Netflix, right?
It's going to be interesting.
Even
too,
Netflix is things that have stuff we've heard of. I think Apple TV Plus is probably a perfect example. It's TV shows we've never seen before, and we're going to buy into something that we don't know whether or not we're going to like. So it's more like that of is this really going to be worth it? But trying it for a month, I think you could probably get an idea about whether or not you like it and decide from there.
It's also like subscription is not a universal fix for things. In some industries, it does really, really well. In other industries, not so well. I think Ben Thompson had a really good article a couple days or a week or so ago where he talked about how you have to fit the content type to the need, and you have real-time programming like sports and news that is traditionally done well one way, and then you have other content like entertainment that's traditionally done well another way. But ads pay way more than subscription for many mediums. Like there's just no competition between what an advertiser will pay and what a subscription service will pay. And especially in podcasts and to some extent video, the ads are they're not non-intrusive, but they're also not terribly, they're not like Punch the Monkey annoyingly or anywhere nearly as bad as a lot of the web ads are. And we found a very good equilibrium between sponsorships and audience, and sort of like everyone's needs gets met. And will just the creators of these shows make anywhere nearly as much that they would like with Lena Dunham or Trevor Noah make as much as if they did one or two sponsors. Because the whole thing with Howard Stern is that companies wanted to pay to hear Howard Stern say their name. That was the big thing for them. And I think it's similar for Leo. It's like there are all sorts of people out there who just want to be on the Leo Laporte show. And that's something that you don't get with subscription. So it'll be, like Andy said, it's going to be interesting to see how well those two models mesh together.
Yeah, there was also the cachet for Howard Stern but what if there were no FCC controlling what he could say or what he could do on his show? And I don't know about this new service if they're going to say we don't want anyone saying anything naughty. I don't care how upset you may be with whatever the government may or may not have done, but we are not going to politicize this service. It's like
I would hope Luminary wouldn't do that, but
yeah, I know
you never know.
It's like the podcasting is the ultimate freedom. Like anybody some people are not really necessarily motivated by making a profit on a podcast. They just have a point of view that they want to share, or they just have conversations with their friends that the fifth time in a row someone says, "Wow, we should be recording this." It turns into a podcast.
That's exactly how all the Twitch shows started. By the way,
exactly.
It was just a bunch of guys sitting around talking and ladies sitting around talking, and we thought, "Oh, this is good." Maybe somebody would want to hear this, but for a couple of years we didn't even want to do ads because we just wanted it was a hobby. Eventually, you have to kind of figure out a way to monetize, I guess. I just think there's also people are getting kind of burned out at these subscriptions.
Yeah, I think Rene can talk about that more. The subscription burnout is definitely something we're kind of talking about right now. A lot of ways that you can get exclusive content, you can get your niche things fed to you the perfect way that you like it, but we're starting to spend more and more on that. And is that becoming a burden on us?
Yeah, to
have to go through
that.
I
think there's two very different models right now, and one is way better for consumers and one is way better for companies. And there's no real subscription fatigue because you used to have to choose which magazines you subscribe to. Like there's never been a time when you could just get everything that you wanted.
In a way, News Plus is a better way because it's one.
So you have Apple Music, which gives you, or Spotify, or a bunch of other services that give you all the music. And then you have News Plus, which is texture, which gives you almost all of the magazines. But what's happening with podcasting is what's happened with video, where every company wants their own service. And you have to pay separately for Disney, separately for Warner if you want the comic book stuff.
That's where you get
for
it.
Warner if you want the Harry.
That's where the
and it feels like they're nickel and diming you.
Yeah, because you can't pay. So you can get all the music from anybody. But you can't get all the podcasts from somebody or all the TV shows from somebody. That would be then nobody would complain. They'd say, well, I pay for music, TV shows, podcasts, whatever. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't have an opinion on it one way or the other. I mean,
but there's like 3 dozen you're gonna have to get just to get like the videos that you want to watch now, and who knows how many. Like what? And you just said like there's gonna be Spotify with their podcast. There's Luminary with their podcast. What if I want one from each? Now I'm paying 2 subscriptions.
Somebody must believe in it. They raised $100 million. That's pretty impressive. All right.
I don't know if it already correlates though, right? Does it always correlate between VC money raised and success of venture?
No.
That's what happens in 3 years when it tanks, or if it tanks.
VCs, you really have to realize the money comes from very fabulously rich people who are no longer content just to invest in the stock market and have their money double every 4 years. They want bigger returns, so they go to somebody who's got a fund and they say, "Look, here's my money. I know you're going to have a bunch of bombs, but if you might have one hit that really they can triple my money, then I'm going to trust you to do that."
They want the Google.
They want the next Google, exactly. Yeah. So that doesn't. It's really it's not dumb money, but it's not necessarily an indicator of the way.
No, it's investment banking. It's like they want 1 out of 50 to pay off, and if you're one of the other 49, they don't care about you.
That's right.
There's a reason why Google has an entire category simply called other bets, and they call them bets.
Right. They are bets, right.
Yeah.
Here comes WWDC, June 3rd. I'm excited. I'm sure, Rich, do you go to this every year? Is it important for you to go?
I don't go every year. It is of varying importance. There will be some years that I will just go. This year is not one of them, unfortunately, but that's okay.
Is it because you can learn everything online? I mean, Apple pretty much puts all the talks online eventually and stuff like that, right?
Well, it's certainly handy that the most of the sessions go up online not long after the conference. The thing that I always miss is what's called the hallway track,
right,
where you sort of randomly meet up with people. I miss the labs. But it's a decision that I have to consider pretty carefully every year. It's a week of work. In fact, it sort of stretches longer because of travel time and recovery.
And not to mention the expense.
Not to mention the expense. But I think it's a great event. And if you signed up and won the lottery, then more power to you. Go enjoy, get something out of it.
Do you look at what the new things they're going to be talking about are and judge it based on that? Like, do I need to know about marzipan? Well, if I do, I'm going to go. If I don't, I don't go.
I try not to. The rumors are the rumors, and of course, they're of varying reliability and accuracy, and we won't really know how accurate they were until the actual event. It's more for me a matter of, can I spare the time and expense to go? I don't usually think too much about what they might or might not be announcing, because they're going to do what they're going to do, whether or not.
Yeah, you can't judge. It does look like, based on 9 to 5 Mac's rundown, and this is Guillermo Rambo.
Oh, before you start that, can I just say that when you show up at Dub and you see Rich and Hockenberry in the front row, you know it's going to be an exciting keynote.
Yeah. In the front row is an important seat. And that was last year,
or at least very loud.
that was last year. This year it looks like a lot of iOS stuff. Maybe that's just 9 to 5 Mac's bias, but they're talking about new Siri intense marzipan improvements, augmented reality, Taptic Engine, NFC. All of this is iOS stuff.
I think they're doing them separately. They seem to be releasing, trickling it out to us over the last couple. Every day you get a new little bite.
Yeah. Will there be? I mean, Mac OS is pretty mature. I don't know.
They had, I think, a couple days ago. It was Siri shortcuts for Mac, and there was 3 or 4. Yeah, screen time.
And Marzipan is, I guess, a Mac technology. It's bringing iOS apps to Mac. So
no, it's once again. Next time, I'm more curious when they talk about new Mac apps, as opposed to, hey, this thing from iOS, we're bringing it to the Mac, and that counts as a new Mac feature. We haven't totally abandoned it.
Yeah,
no,
but shortcuts coming to the Mac is a good thing.
That's a very good thing. Yes.
Yeah. Although
I think it's going to be interesting to see, because if you just follow Steve Troughton-Smith, his excitement level over UIKit on the Mac, and not only what it's going to enable for developers who are, because there's so many iOS developers, for them getting into the Mac market, but sort of how it's going to force a level of maturity in some of the technologies like split view and some parity between things like dark modes, and Apple's own apps don't have feature parity right now, and sort of the discipline that might invest. I think there is a certain level of excitement around it.
Yeah. I just remember a day when we didn't celebrate the fact that the Mac has the same features as an iOS device, and we didn't necessarily, as a Mac user, I didn't necessarily celebrate that my iPad was getting the same features as my Mac. I used to celebrate that there is a really wonderful new discovery feature for Wi-Fi in the Mac. I want to see the same enthusiasm for the Mac from Apple.
You're kind of speaking to an older time, though. The iPhone is the most popular thing, and you have to kind of consider the fact that Apple has definitely, hit that mark with the iPhone, and now they're bringing people into the fold with Mac. They're saying, now that you have an iPhone, wouldn't you love to have a Mac that works with your iPhone so you can do all these great things with it? So I think the idea that they're not merging the two. They're not making iOS the new platform for Mac. But I think the ability to merge the two to make a more seamless user experience is a really good thing. Especially if you come from iPhone first, which there are a lot of people that I've met that do that. They were on iOS, they were on an iPhone for years, and they finally bit the bullet and went and got a Mac computer, a laptop usually. And if your user experience is as familiar to you as it is on iOS, then that's good for you. You appreciate it and you enjoy it more. And I think having these apps that kind of use that marzipan idea of bringing them together and in a more uniform way is a benefit to a lot of people. And I get that, that there's the old schoolers who, I want it like it used to be, but it's not. And I think bringing new people into the Mac sphere is a good thing. And it's not harming the macOS operating system to have a more seamless user interface between the two devices.
Yeah, I have to say that my disappointment is not that the Mac isn't like it used to be. My disappointment is that it's exactly like it used to be. It's like it used to be for the past 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years almost. That the innovation that I'm seeing in pretty much every other operating system that's designed to be used with a keyboard and a trackpad, I'm not seeing that same movement in the Mac. It's the least exciting desktop in my office today is probably my Mac. I love my Mac the most, but really even my Raspberry Pi is more interesting in so many ways than the Mac desktop is. I really would like to see some sign from Apple that they really do care about it. That I know that there are people who are big fans of the Mac at Apple. I know there are people who work very hard on it and who innovate as much as they possibly can. But I just don't see from the other side of the keynote screen, in the audience, looking at what they choose to present and what they choose to actually ship. I'm not seeing any level of corporate interest in continuing the Mac. I think you're spot on. I think that Apple does think that the Mac is our passion is in iOS devices. However, we have a tradition in desktops. We're not going to let that die because that's like giving away free money. But we feel that it's most useful as a platform for people to develop things for iOS on, or as a alternative to Windows notebooks and Chromebooks for people who own iPads and iPhones. I just don't see them I don't see them ever doing an ad that says, here is a Macintosh, boom. Here is a competing Windows device, boom. Look how much better the Mac is than this other thing. I just don't see them ever taking that as a point of pride anymore. And I just don't know how that's going to feed. I don't know how not making the Mac better and better and better is going to make better consumer Macs, because you start off making high performance, rockets, and then 2 or 3 years later you figure out how to scale that down for actual users. They're just not developing the really, really good juicy bits that we really, really need to keep the Mac as a viable thing.
Rich Siegel, you've been developing for the Mac for 25 years. You're a Mac stalwart. Do you worry about the future of the Mac at all?
I see a lot of merit in Andy's points. I think that I would like to see Apple staying as close as they can to the enthusiast audience for desktop hardware. I think that's important because the enthusiasts are what drives innovation. If you look, and I'm going to apologize in advance because analogies to cars and the car industry are just so tired, but sometimes it works. The best vehicles come from manufacturers who build cars for the enthusiasts, because those technologies end up making the rest of the product line better and more interesting. And I would love to see Apple back where they were when they were doomed and they built the fastest hardware on the planet. They had a compelling argument that PowerPC Macs were faster than Intel. And of course, now it is all Intel, but Apple's not using the fastest Intel hardware available, but all the commodity Windows boxes are. So I feel like there's a disconnect there. I feel like Apple could really benefit from taking a good hard look at the enthusiast audience and saying, okay, what do the people who are gaming need? What do people who are doing high-end, high-performance scientific computing, what do they need? What sort of big iron do software developers really want to be more productive on the hardware side of things? And I have a 2018 MacBook Pro here that I just got a few months ago because the battery on my 2013 machine failed, and I didn't want to wait a week for it to be repaired. Well, gee, I sure wish I had a swappable battery.
Yeah.
And
or at
so
least a swappable keyboard.
Yeah. And so I feel as though in some ways Apple has gotten away from things that were really beneficial to the audience, really beneficial to the platform, for a variety of reasons, which are perfectly valid to an ongoing business, right?
Yes.
Replaceable batteries are more expensive. They require a slightly larger enclosure. They're less space efficient. Upgradable hardware has many of the same complaints, but there's a great deal to be said for anyone who has enough motivation to be able to replace a failed component in the field, to upgrade to a newer version of some device which makes their computer better, like a hard drive.
Yeah.
So the Mac hardware almost seems as though it has become more appliance-like in the same sense that iOS devices are. And I don't love that.
So I take it we're not going to see a marzipan version of your software at any point.
But you need the reverse.
Reverse marzipan.
Listening to the discussions about marzipan, I realized that if I had written BBEdit for iOS first, this summer I could be on the Mac.
How hard was it to put? So BBEdit was in the Mac App Store originally?
Yeah. So BBEdit was. I don't know if it was the first, but it was one of the very earliest third-party apps to be in the Mac App Store in 2011.
Yeah.
And it was there for 3 3/4 years. October 2014 was when we stopped offering BBEdit in the Mac App Store. And a lot of time passed. There were a lot of conversations, a lot of evolution of both BBEdit and the OS and the App Store, and now here we are again.
The reason you pulled out in the first place was that apps in the App Store were limited in the kinds of things it could do, and you felt like BBEdit needed to have those capabilities.
There were a lot of limitations that we sort of had to live with at the time. Certain features that couldn't be made to work. Certain features that were simply not allowed because of the App Store rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And
did they loosen up on those, or did you find new ways to accomplish what you wanted to do, or did you give up on those features?
So the third question is easy to answer. We haven't given up on anything.
Okay, good.
What we found was that beginning with macOS Mojave, there were facilities added to the OS that made it possible to do the things that we needed to do.
Interesting. Okay.
So that is actually why BBEdit in the Mac App Store requires macOS Mojave, whereas the direct versions can run on older versions of the OS, because there are facilities new to Mojave that let the App Store version do these things.
Can you say what some of those things were?
Yeah. So two of BBEdit's more technical features, but very widely used, rely on the ability to escalate privileges. That is, you get prompted for an administrator password, so that in BBEdit you can install the command line tools and then tie into Unix workflows. You also have the ability in BBEdit to make changes to files that you don't own under Unix's permissions. And that sort of privilege escalation is something that was not ever supported by the OS directly. And the workarounds, the solutions that we and other similar developers used were not allowed in the App Store. So the OS has a facility to support this now for specific operations.
Good.
Which just happen to be the ones we need to use.
And, I mean, it's clear why Apple would do that. They don't want, privilege escalation is a really big issue when it comes to malware. And so they wanted to protect users against malicious applications. And so that makes a lot of sense. But also, I think the compromise solution seems to make a lot of sense. You know what else makes a lot of sense? The rebus on the back of my back.
I'm wearing that
Plot
very
twist.
same shirt.
This is the BBEdit 25th anniversary T-shirt.
That is so cute.
Isn't that nice?
That's awesome.
Yes.
I have to thank Rich for sending me a couple of those, because I love them. And I also thank Rich for BBEdit, which I've used for years.
Yes.
And it's probably one of the very first apps I install on any new Macintosh. Now I have a license, obviously I have since like BBEdit 5, but how do I get the App Store version? What happens to me there?
So the world is in the licensing sense, the world is kind of split. One of the other evolutions that took place was that the subscription model came to the Mac App Store.
Right.
And so what we ended up having to do here was what we wanted to do was to give our customers a choice, because subscriptions, even though in one sense they've been around for a long time and everybody sort of accepts the notion of paying on an ongoing basis for a product or service, in some parts of the audience, some parts of the market, they're still a very new thing. I don't remember when it was that Adobe started charging a subscription fee for Creative Suite.
It was very controversial, but now we've all kind of settled down and
it was extremely controversial at the time, and a lot of folks had to go through the 5 stages of subscription grief.
Yes.
And so we're seeing a little bit of that now, but to get back on topic, what we're doing is, for our current customers, if you're not in the Mac App Store and you want what we call the perpetual license, where you buy a license to the version you have, we're still doing that. That's outside of the Mac App Store because the rules and mechanics sort of require it. Inside of the Mac App Store, the way we're able to make a viable business out of it is to offer a subscription. So in either case, you've got 30 days to use BBEdit. You get all the features, everything's there. After the evaluation period is over, there's what we call free mode. And free mode sort of fulfills a lot of needs.
Yeah, for most people, it's everything you need. Is it Text Wrangler, basically?
It's sort of Text Wrangler Plus, and you sort of beat me to it here, because one of the things that free mode does is it gives us the transition from Text Wrangler.
Yeah. So
if you're using Text Wrangler now and you're running macOS 10, 12, or later, go get BBEdit from our website. It's a better product anyway. It's 64-bit. It's got a lot of refinements and polish over the Text Wrangler you've been using, and also the OS won't bark at you about running a 32-bit application.
Right.
So BBEdit in free mode is Text Wrangler plus 5 years worth of refinement and a few additional features. And in the App Store, it is the same. If you keep using BBEdit after those first 30 days are up, you get free mode. The difference is, inside of the App Store, you can sign up for a subscription. We have monthly or annual. And outside of the App Store, you can buy a license from us. Other than that, the products are identical. They do the same things. There's no compromises, which was very important to us. We had, back in the past, we had a lot of confusion because customers would say, oh, I'm using BBEdit, but it doesn't do this. Well, sorry, you got it from the App Store, and we can't do that. And those days are over. Now both products function identically. They look identical, except for the small differences because of the licensing model. And so we're very happy about that, about being able to do that. Also, either way, whether you get BBEdit from us directly or from the Mac Store, from the Mac App Store, you get our customer service and tech support. And that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of customer service you can't really get anywhere anymore.
It's so expensive to offer it. And if somebody, developer, sends you an app, I mean, I completely sympathize with the need to do this. It actually makes sense. But we've been spoiled over the years by paying a flat fee. But if you get $50 from somebody and they haven't paid you in 10 years, and I know I still find Mac apps like, I think of one of my favorite Mac apps, Super Duper, which I paid, when I look at the license, it's like 10 years, more than 10 years old. And I feel kind of bad using it. I almost want to just send the guy more money. And if you then put tech support on top of that, which is hugely expensive, you're not going to have any profit at all. So I understand why you need to do that.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, there are a lot of issues sort of tied up in there. Providing tech support is a direct cost. It's funny you mentioned Super Duper. Dave Nanian is a good man. He's a friend of mine. He's a fellow Rhode Islander. And so that sort of keeps it all in the family. I know a guy.
Yeah, I know a guy.
And honestly, I don't know how he does it, except that I think he probably sells a new license every time somebody buys a new Mac.
I think so. I pay him by telling everybody, if you have a Mac, you have to have Super Duper.
And that's kind of what I tell all my friends too.
And BBEdit.
and yeah, so it's tough because a long time ago, the Mac App Store, and this is definitely in the past. I'm not talking about current operations, but a long time ago, the App Store sort of created this expectation that you can pay once for an app and never have to pay for it again.
Right.
And that is literally true. Right. You could do that, but there's nobody who does that and is able to build a sustainable business on it. Excuse me, either they lose interest and move on to something else and abandon the app that you paid for, or they go out of business.
Yeah.
Or they put out another version, and then people act indignant because they have to pay for another version. I completely agree that the subscription model, especially for certain kinds of apps that need a cloud service and tech support and things like that, the subscription model is the best way to help support that developer. And because just like you're saying, that people got used to either free or 99-cent apps, or you pay once and you get it forever, that there's this expectation that is just not sustainable. Rich, if you had your druthers, if you could have it your way, would you prefer users subscribe or buy a license?
I think I would still prefer the perpetual license model, where you buy a license and we can offer you discounted upgrades.
Yeah, because you do upgrades every few years, so you do have a steady revenue stream that way.
Yeah, that's historically how we've done it, is to sell upgrades. I would love to be able to do that in the Mac App Store, but I also have to work with the reality of what's there. Yeah. And so the goal for me and my colleagues is build a sustainable business selling BBEdit. And the mechanics for doing that inside the App Store today involve subscriptions. Outside of the App Store, we can keep doing what we're doing and sell licenses and upgrades. And as I said, sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry. I was going to ask a question.
So as I said before, historically, we've worked very hard at making sure that our customers have a choice. So we're not forcing anybody into subscriptions. We're not forcing anybody into perpetual licenses. The choice is there.
Mm. And this is, I don't think anybody's asked you a question yet that has forced you to plead the Fifth Amendment yet. So I'll dive in and ask you, if there's one aspect of having an app in the App Store you could magically wish into the cornfield, what would it be? As a developer.
As a developer, I think what I would really like to be able to do is connect with my customers. The rules of the App Store, Apple's own privacy rules, make it verboten for developers to request personal information from their customers. So there's no way, unless the customer writes to us and says, I got BBEdit from the App Store, absent that, we have no way of knowing who our customers are. And I would love a better way to connect with our customers.
I thought you were going to ask him for Avengers Endgame spoilers, and I was about to just cover up.
Rene, you haven't watched it yet? Aren't some people already watching that?
I wasn't on the red carpet, sadly. Chris Evans and Scarlett invited me, but I just couldn't make it in time.
I'm actually glad.
It's because you were flooded.
I'm glad I mentioned Super Duper because Gardner in a chat room pointed out that Dave also wrote Brief, which kind of blows me away. I mean, that is a legendary text editor, DOS-based text editor. And frankly, I think Steve Gibson still uses Brief to code in MASM. So he's got at least still got one user out there.
Perpetual license didn't pay off in that case.
Yeah, really. Wow, that blows me away.
Reboot that computer.
That's amazing.
That's the thing about text editors. The thing is, the usefulness, the utility of a text file has not gone away. ASCII is going to turn out to be one of the most important standards ever created for the community.
It's papyrus for the computer world. I mean, it's It's like
amazing.
If you. It's not like an Adobe product where if you stop paying your license fee, oh no, I can't open these text files anymore. So that lock-in is not a problem.
Yeah,
right.
I love my favorite, and I've mentioned this before. My favorite BBEdit feature is that I can use the command line in BBEdit and have an editable record of everything I've typed in. I just love that. And I don't know if you got that from the Mac Programmers Workshop MPW way back when, but it was also my favorite feature in MPW. So I'm really glad to still have that capability. I think that's just
MPW worksheets were definitely the inspiration for shell worksheets in BBEdit, but we couldn't do them without the Mac OS having accessible Unix infrastructure.
The main reason I still use a Mac. Honestly.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying I don't just the grep feature alone.
Oh, the grep in BBEdit is
it's like
absolutely.
The ability to simply say that the number of times when I was when I was still working in computer labs where I would solve a problem in 18 minutes when someone had given me 2 days to bash a text file, and I would have 2 days to go play mini golf just because I knew just enough grep to do a massive search and replace conditionally in BBEdit. It's I still can't count the number of lunches that I owe Rich and the rest of the team.
Rich has written in a full grep into BBEdit, a really good one, very, very powerful.
There is time. There's a tagline in there somewhere now you've got time for mini golf.
Yep.
Find Galaxy Fold release date, replace with TBA.
Hey, we should mention that. Yeah. The Galaxy Fold was slated to come out on Friday. I was ready to go to the T-Mobile store on Thursday and get one because I missed out on the pre-order. I guess I'm lucky. They shipped
$2,000 in singles.
Yeah, $1,980. I mean, it's not cheap. And they shipped out review units to Marcus Brownlee, Joanna Stern.
We have 2 or 3 of them. They're fine, by the way.
Oh, interesting. iMore has some. I'm thinking the people who's broke. Mark Gurman's broke. All the 3 people I've mentioned so far have broke.
Dieter Bohn, Steve Kovac, and and there was a 5th one in Europe who got the same bumps that Dieter got, but he figures his debris fell out the opposite way, so he was fine in the end.
Dieter says at The Verge that in the photo shoot they use this putty to hold the phone up, and he thinks the putty got into the hinge, and that's what bulged up his phone. Joanna Stern did what a lot of people did, because when I got the Galaxy S10, there's a screen protector on it. And I don't like screen protectors, so she thought, oh, there's a screen. But she started to peel it, so little corners coming up, and then she realized maybe I shouldn't. But Steve Kovac,
it shows you how tenacious Gurman is because he got that whole thing off.
Gurman both got it off.
But he got the whole thing off.
Samsung neglected to mention apparently, there's some dispute of that you shouldn't peel that off. It's integral to the screen, and if you do, you will break the screen. But all of those reviewers we mentioned have broken folds. Which is not a good sign. 2 days in, Samsung announced yesterday that they are not going to release it on Friday after all.
I really wish there was someone recording that meeting I want to see what that PowerPoint looked like. Say, ladies and gentlemen of the board, we have boxes of angry wasps all ready to send to the stores all across the world. Now, do we send the boxes of angry wasps, or we decide that maybe that would cause some problems for us that could be abdicated if we simply didn't willingly send boxes that we know are filled with angry wasps to our customers who have just given us 2,000? Would that affect the buzz, so to speak, of our product? It's
actually
like
the actual press release is not far off, Andy. While many reviewers shared with us the vast potential they see, some also showed us how the device needs further improvements that it can ensure the best possible user experience. Yeah, not break in the first 2 days would be a good start. To fully evaluate this feedback and run further internal tests, we've decided to delay the release of the Galaxy Fold. Initial findings from the inspection of reported issues on the display showed they could be associated with impact on the top and bottom exposed areas of the hinge. There was also an instance where substances found inside the device affected the display performance. We will take measures to strengthen the display protection. We'll also enhance the guidance on care and use of the display, including a big message on the box when you open it saying, "Don't take off the protective layer, whatever you do."
Warning, live bees inside. Yes.
It's the Ingress, though, because they didn't provide any Ingress rating, which they do on all their other phones. And when you look at Dieter's video, you can see the gaps when he's opening and closing it, just opening and closing. And humans are filthy creatures, Leo. We are filthy.
I would really
creatures.
like one of these phones. I like the principle of it. But I guess I was going to go down and buy one, even though it's so expensive. Just in fact, even after we started hearing of these issues, but now I can't. So I'm not sure how long it'll be postponed. Some are saying a month. I wouldn't be surprised if Samsung scraps the whole project. But
Leo, eventually you'll fold and get one.
I will fold.
Hey,
You'll become unhinged, Rich.
Eventually, I will fold and become unhinged. Hey, I had another question I wanted to ask Rich, but I'm going to take a break, and we'll do it after the break. This was the thing I brought up at the very last minute last week about notarizing your app, and the text in the Apple note that said that beginning 10.14.5 macOS, all software or it's actually some future version of macOS notarization will be required. And I wanted to ask Rich what his reading is on that, because it scared me, but maybe I shouldn't be scared. Before we do, though, let me tell you where you can sell your Galaxy Fold. No. But I will tell you about Gazelle, the place to buy and sell your gadgets. Gazelle is a great online marketplace for buying certified pre-owned devices. If you had the money set aside to buy a Galaxy Fold, maybe you should instead go to Gazelle, take a few hundred of those 2000s, and get a device in great condition. Actually, you could choose fair, good, or excellent condition, but in every case, great prices. Everything from the iPhone 6 through the iPhone 10, a variety of Samsung Galaxy phones, MacBooks, Air and Pro, and iPads, standard Air and Pro. Here's the reason I like buying from Gazelle. Every device goes through a thorough 30-point inspection. They're backed also by a 30-day return policy there's no restocking fee, and shipping is free. So really, there's no risk, but you're going to get a great product. But should anything not be up to snuff from your point of view, it costs you nothing to return it. All of their products are sold without carrier contract. I like that too. And they all work with major carriers or unlocked. Plus, they have financing at checkout with a firm. You can get instantly approved, pay it off in 3, 6, or 12 months, and that's right at checkout. It's very easy to do. With Gazelle's incredible selection of quality pre-owned devices, they're a great choice for students, parents who have to buy phones for their kids, parents who broke their phones and now have to buy a new one. If you don't know what to do with your old devices, check out Gazelle for great offers on your used phones, tablets, and computers. But don't forget, you can also buy certified pre-owned devices. And right now, if you go to gazelle.com/twit, you'll get 10% off your purchase. Gazelle, GAZELLE.com/twit. It is a good way to save Mother Earth. Why send that old phone to landfill? You can find a good home at Gazelle. So I probably went off half-cocked, but I did note that Apple has said that at some point notarization will be required by default for all software. Notarization, as Lory explained to me last week, is really just kind of like using certificates. It's just an extra step. Does this mean, in your opinion, Rich, that we're going to have a developer will have to send all of their apps to Apple for notarization before they can be released and run?
My reading of and understanding of the news based on Apple's own notes is that the current 10.14.5 notarization is for developers whose certificates have been issued after a certain date, or
if they're new if they're new developers. Yeah,
right. So if you're a new developer, beginning with 10.14.5, you will have to notarize your app in order for it to run on macOS 10.14.5.
Could I, as a user, defeat Gatekeeper and say no, run it anyway?
You can tell Gatekeeper to open anything.
Okay.
There are certain explicit gestures that you have to do.
That was my only real concern. I don't want to have.
Yeah.
I don't want to only be able to get apps that Apple has approved, like on the iPhone.
You have to right click on the application and choose open, and you might get a warning from the OS, and you click open anyway, and it goes ahead and opens it. So I don't think that there's going to be a problem for users who want to run anything.
Good.
But it appears going forward from context in that note that the next major version of macOS will require notarization for an app to run signed with a developer ID certificate. Again, that may have to do with when the cert was issued or when the application was notarized. That's a little too soon to tell, but I suspect you'll be able to continue to override that in Gatekeeper.
You suspect, but aren't.
I suspect, but we won't know more about that until WWDC and Apple makes their developer announcements.
Okay. I understand the need for code signing, and I think it's a great thing, and I encourage that. And I also think it's really important for me to be able to write an app that I can run on my own machine, and that for me to get apps from other people that aren't necessarily Apple developers or aren't necessarily notarized by Apple, with at my own risk, but there's plenty of cases for that.
Yeah, notarization is there to sort of solve a general case of developer-signed applications outside of the App Store that haven't gone through Apple's review processes.
Right.
It's pretty clear that user security and privacy are extremely important to Apple, and they want to be able to cover that ground as thoroughly as possible. So I get it. I don't have any problem with notarization. When they announced it last year, we just started doing it. It was easy enough to do, and we were very happy to work with some of the technical folks inside to kind of smooth out the developer workflows and come up with some ways to make it work for us.
Yeah, that's the other question. It's not an approval. It's not like an App Store approval process. They're not. It's pretty automated, right?
It as far as I know, it is completely automated.
Yeah.
They look for certain malware patterns, characteristic bit patterns inside of your application. They do thoroughly check to make sure that the application is correctly signed with a valid certificate, which actually worked pretty well for us. We were able to sort out a couple of signing glitches when we started notarizing. Nothing that would have affected anybody, but of course, it's good to get this stuff right. And so when an app is notarized, that doesn't say anything about its quality or what it does necessarily. But there are certain restrictions that come along with being notarized. In order to be notarized, you have to sign the application to use something called the hardened runtime. And you can think of it as a very limited set of restrictions in which an application has to declare what it's going to do if it wants to do anything sensitive. So if it's going to access your address book, it has to declare in various static signed ways that it's going to do this. If it's going to send events to other applications, Apple events, it has to declare that it's going to do this. If you don't declare intention and then try to do something that requires it, the OS will actually shut your app down.
Yikes.
That's
like iOS Intense, right?
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. Okay. So in order to be notarized, you have to be using the hardened runtime. And so there is that extra measure of security and user assurance that goes along with it.
Yeah, but any other questions, or we'll move on? I also owe Apple another apology because I mocked Liam. I did.
You did.
I mocked Liam, the disassembling robot. And, of course, Liam has been replaced by Daisy. And I said, what, they got one robot? How many iPhones could that possibly disassemble? Well, Apple has...
mocks a robot.
I mocked many robots, much to my peril. But I'm an old man. I don't expect to live into the era of robots, so I'll be all right. As long as the robots don't hold it against my children, I'm okay. Turns out Daisy can disassemble 1.2 million phones a year. Now, Apple sells a lot more than that, but still, that's pretty darn impressive. Nice job, Daisy. And Daisy is going to start disassembling and recycling iPhones, select used iPhones, returned to Best Buy stores throughout the U.S. and retailers in the Netherlands at KPN, or if you recycle it through the Apple Store. So Daisy's keeping pretty busy. Apple's received nearly 1 million devices in the years they've been doing this recycling program. In 2018, Apple refurbished more than 7.8 million Apple devices. One of the things they do is they get the cobalt out of there, and that, of course, is a very controversial part of lithium-ion batteries. Recycling it means fewer children in mines and things like that. So I apologize. 200 iPhones an hour Daisy can do. It'd be nice. Maybe they could make some more Daisies.
Yeah. Did you hear that for the Japan Olympics, they're going to be making the medals out of recycled electronics?
Isn't that awesome?
So an iPhone will either cost you $1,000 or 8 years of training starting at age 9.
It does. So if you're not going to Gazelle and bringing your iPhones to Gazelle, I would encourage you, if you're going to get a new iPhone, to recycle it through Apple, because that way Daisy will get her claws on it.
That's got to be painful to watch. Just seeing all of those probably perfectly good. I used to work in a department store, and I still have nightmares about the time where I think Polaroid or somebody had this deal where bring in any camera and we'll give you like $50 off, like a new Polaroid SX70 or whatever it was, and they just had this big bin in the warehouse filled with like beautiful old Nikons and beautiful old cameras that, like, can I just like give you $50 cash and I will just take I wanted to save all these cameras from being destroyed.
I know how you feel. Yeah. This is brave of Apple, because in the one of the pictures they distributed in the press release about this is the conveyor belt, I guess, into the guts of Daisy. They do show a bent iPhone, so I don't. Maybe the censors didn't get a hold of that one, but there you go. If you bend your iPhone,
it never shipped to customers because it failed to pass Apple's rigorous quality assurance.
Wait a minute. Does that say Lou in Ontario on that one? Lou in Toronto.
Oh, you know that phone.
I think it was unboxed aggressively.
There was the CNET article that kind of went into this a little bit deeper by Ian Shear.
Yes.
Where he interviewed Lisa Jackson and actually went to the facility. And there was one thing that I remember I thought was very interesting was Apple is actually sort of recommending that you don't just leave your phone in a drawer, but bring it in for recycling. And in my mind, I'm thinking, holding on to it just in case I need to pass it down to somebody seems like the better method for, not getting all these things into our landfill. But I think Apple is saying, no, we can actually, if it's new enough, we can fix it up and polish it up and send it out to somebody else. And if you let it sit in your drawer for too long, then it does become, 30% waste or whatever before it gets recycled. So that was actually the one call out to me that meant the most was if you have an iPhone that you're not using, take it in and get it recycled, get some money back off it. The newer the phone,
That's a good
the
point.
more likely it is it'll get back out into the world again.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because I do have a drawer of phones, but then my daughter breaks her phone every 3 months, so I kind of need to have those. There, it's not going to stay there.
You have
long.
a dispenser, right, Leo? You pull one out.
Basically, do. Here you go, honey. It's like tissues. Here is Daisy, which is this is from the CNET article you're talking about, which is a series of robotic arms. Daisy's bigger than she looks, and so this is kind of an amazing thing that they're able to do.
I mean, if you can't get work putting Iron Man's suit on and off, he's uses nanites now. You got to get into the phone business.
Yeah, and good on Apple for doing that. I'm sure it was not an inexpensive thing to do. Although those materials are quite valuable. And eventually you're going to get scarce, right? And so it's a good idea to reuse them if you can. Apple.
Yeah, at some point we're going to run out of the materials that we use for our phones, and then what?
Oh my God. Then what?
The asteroid miners.
Yeah.
Yeah. By then the phones will come in aerosol form.
Got a hot ear.
Reuters big scoop. Apple in talks with potential suppliers of sensors for self-driving cars. They're looking for LIDAR, which of course, and I don't know if it's related to this, but Elon Musk said yesterday, only idiots use LIDAR in their self-driving cars. Okay, fine.
We're in the middle of the self-driving camera wars. So like cameras or LIDAR, Leo. Which side are you on? Tastes great, less filling.
Apple is looking for less expensive LIDAR units, smaller, cheaper, and more easily mass-produced than the current technology. They want, and it says this in the RFC, revolutionary design, please.
Maybe they're listening to Horace Dedier and they're going to make self-driving bikes because it's more efficient.
Oh, I like that. I love my e-bike. We instead of driving to visit the in-laws for Easter, we bicycled, and it was a 15-minute bicycle ride. It would have been a 10-minute car ride. It wasn't that different, and it was so much more fun, except for the swarm of gnats that we flew through. I think I got them off my teeth. But other than that...
was that box of wasps that Andy was talking about.
So Apple clearly, is still interested in self-driving vehicles. There's no doubt about that. And not just designing the software thereof, but actually making them.
Yeah, they were never not interested. That was a whole really weird news cycle.
Yeah.
Well, it's still so up in the air on how soon can this be regulated so that they will be allowed on the streets to begin with, and then who's actually going to buy them. I'm a lot more bullish on the idea of adding autonomous-like features to existing cars, like automated lane merge, automatic getting on and off highways, and sort of a smarter version of cruise control for accident avoidance. But the idea of autonomous driving, as we keep hearing it predicted, it's not available now. Look forward to the year 2000. I don't see that coming anytime soon because the systems just aren't reliable enough. But as a people mover in controlled places like Disney World, inside campuses, stuff like that, maybe. But I've so totally given up having any sort of a valid opinion on when this thing is going to arrive the way that we think it's going to arrive.
I loved the footage yesterday where Elon showed off the self-driving car, and everyone on Twitter is like, this is amazing, except for the people who drive on the 208 to go, no, I'm on that road, and that is never going to work, and I'm terrified right now.
Yeah.
He actually, the so much funny things. It was a demonstration of the new next level autonomous modes, basically as an investor sort of pitch. And part of it was saying, I think, Rene, you were talking about that person who's asking about how poorly people see that I've got a Tesla and they know that the self-driving technology isn't very aggressive, so they'll cut in front of me knowing that the self-driving software, and asking, can we make the software more aggressive? And I think Elon was talking about how, well, yeah, we're looking at new driving modes, including like a mode that says basically go ahead and risk a fender bender if you have to. And like, what? Well, and thinking, okay, so will this system say only hit cars that seem to be worth a lot less than the Tesla, or make sure that look for Apple cars.
Driver age is older than.
Yeah. Do a license plate check. See how good their insurance is and how much money they made last year if they're worth suing. Then ram them.
I feel bad because my Tesla is only 2.5 years old and it doesn't have any of this technology in it. So it's like, oh man, it's obsolete already.
Aren't you getting it?
I don't know. I'm a little nervous about the future of Tesla. So my lease runs out end of July. What do you think? Should I get a Model 3 with this new technology, or should I don't know. There's so many.
If you're not going to get it, who is? You got it. Just go for it. You have to be our test subject on this.
Okay, well, you talked me into it. I don't know.
Well, also, I'm really encouraging people to invest in this technology because already I have people who like drive manual transmissions that lord it over me that I don't know how to drive stick. I like to be able to lord it over people who, again, don't know how to merge into a highway without having software take over. I can parallel park, man. Okay,
He did say,
parallel park like a mother. You know?
And this worried me a lot, that there's 3 different autonomy modes, including an aggressive autonomy mode if you don't mind the occasional fender bender.
Yeah.
What? That doesn't seem like a good switch to have.
Yeah, I don't. I would much rather be able to say that I traded paint willfully and I administered some street justice. I don't want my car deciding for me that, let's see, I see a couple of different infant seats in the back seat. Yeah, let's just
let's go for it.
Encourage them to go. No.
Anyway,
flip that switch and your insurance rates go up.
Yeah. What are the consequences of that? Do they test that car and say, oh, you had aggressive mode on, so therefore,
good point.
You're partially at fault for this or something like that. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Apple got FCC approval yesterday for the Powerbeats Pro. Now your decision. Do I get AirPods or Powerbeats Pro? These use the H1 chip, the same one in the AirPods. I like the form factor a little better. They've got an over-the-ear loop. Does it sound better? I don't know.
Sound the same.
I think.
They've got the Beats, right?
They got the Beats. They got the Beats. Yeah.
I think we have to wait on that though, because I think that we need to make sure that presumably Powerbeats Pro are going to have the same quality and sort of bass heavy sound as the other Powerbeats or the Beats X or something like that. But maybe they're going to adjust that. Maybe it's not going to be. So I think we just have to wait.
They're $100 more.
I think CNET tried them and said they sounded better than the AirPods, but did have that classic Beats oomph.
Yeah, I don't like the heavy bass.
Which is a big deal for some people. It's really important when you're making that decision that you understand ahead of time what it means to have a bass heavy.
They're also sweat proof. They're a little better for working out because of the ear hooks and the sweat proof thing. So sweat and water resistant, designed for optimal performance under such conditions.
Yeah.
For some people, it might be a win.
Don't stay on your ears.
Better battery life too. 5-hour battery life on AirPods. 9-hour battery life on Powerbeats.
Yeah. I was going to say exactly what Rene said, that for some people, they just don't find the existing AirPods comfortable. So if these are just a better fit for some people, people who've been sort of lusting after truly wireless and easily paired headphones, it's a win.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to the most on that one. Having that pain in my ear after half an hour of using the AirPods, I'll be looking forward to something that's a little softer. They're not as cute though. I'm not a big fan of those big things chunked into your ear like that. It reminds me of those old Bluetooth connectors that people would wear in their ears so that they could wirelessly talk on their phones,
So you're too young. You didn't grow up lusting after those big earphones that had the FM radio on the side of it.
Oh God, yes, definitely.
Everyone on roller skates at the park were like absolutely the bomb.
Finally, a teenager is suing Apple for, I have to put the pinky up to my mouth here, $1 billion, claiming that Apple was using face recognition in its stores and it led to his false arrest. It's not exactly what happened. He was arrested in November by the NYPD, linked to a series of Apple Store thefts in Boston, New Jersey, Delaware, and Manhattan. But the reason he was arrested is because the bad guys had found his driving permit. It didn't have a photo, but it had his name, address, and other personal information. The lawsuit claims Apple programmed its store's face recognition system to associate the real thief's face with the plaintiff's details, but Apple says, well, we don't use face recognition in our store.
Does that remind you of that old West Wing thing where they said they caught the terrorist because of a broken taillight, and the guy said, sir, we've discovered over the years that no amount of manpower or money equals the criminals being stupid?
This is valuable, yeah.
Well, and the NYPD may be jumping the gun because they found that ID. They arrested the kid, and then it's, according to the story in Engadget, the detective that eventually examined Apple's surveillance footage, old-fashioned Face ID, noticed that the guy they'd arrested didn't look anything like the guy that was doing the robbery. Plus, turns out the kid was attending his senior prom when the Boston theft happened. So, sounds like he's got an alibi. I don't know if he's got a $1 billion case against Apple, however.
Yeah. But there are going to be more problems like this, especially since the EU just voted to move forward a new regulation that would basically unify the entire biometric database for law enforcement for everybody in the EU.
Yes.
So, and considering that, so basically, if one of these databases has a false match, everybody's going to have a false match on you. And given that we've already demonstrated that not all face recognition systems are half as good as they are in the movies, and that if you are not white, you might have a problem being matched with somebody else because a lot of these systems were trained on white faces and not enough non-white faces. This is going to be a problem, and we're going to see more people whose lives are turned upside down by a mismatch, and then with absolute good reason are looking for somebody to sue.
Yeah.
It was hilarious to me because, we saw the whole controversy with JetBlue using face instead of passports.
Wasn't that interesting? When you get on the plane, they're going to do face ID, face recognition.
So I had this weird experience where because I have Nexus. So I went up to the Nexus machine. It scanned my irises. I went to the customs guy. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Apple." He goes, "Oh, their Face ID is horrible. It's going to be an end to privacy for all of us."
Oh my God!
And I was like, I didn't say it because I didn't want to be barred from the country. But I'm like, you just saw me take a retina scan that I'm sure is being stored on one of the databases of one of the companies that had a massive breach last year, and you're concerned about Face ID.
I wonder. So this all came from a social media thread in which a traveler said that when she boarded an international JetBlue flight, instead of scanning my boarding pass or handing over my passport, I looked into a camera before being allowed down the jet bridge. She asks, does facial recognition replace boarding passes? Unknowns to me, did I consent to this? Yeah. JetBlue says, yeah, but you can opt out of it if it makes you feel uncomfortable. So I think that's interesting. I don't know if I have a problem with that. I do worry about these big databases with our biometric information.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
because you can't change your face or your fingerprint.
Yeah. And the problem is that they collect that data. And if you opt out of it, well, they still already have that data. So whatever they can do to monetize that by selling it to someone who's providing biometric data to law enforcement or the governments, you're still kind of hosed there. You have so little control over this that this is fly the red banner of revolution problem scale problems.
How does opt out, what does opt out mean? If you're walking past a camera to get on the plane, you're walking past a camera to get on the plane. How do you know, are they turning the camera off as you walk past? Or that's very true that opting out doesn't necessarily mean anything if they're still collecting that data. And instead, you're just handing your boarding pass over. Yeah. That camera's still there and still taking your picture.
Well, what's interesting is she asked JetBlue, where did you get the face information anyway? And on Twitter, JetBlue said the information is provided by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Yeah. What? They're secure. We should clarify, these photos aren't provided to us, but are securely transmitted to the Customs and Border Protection database. So JetBlue doesn't have access to the photos and doesn't store them. So basically, you walk past this camera and it goes, ding, yeah, that's Mackenzie. And then here's a link to JetBlue explaining this new, your face is your boarding pass. And it's at JFK. I don't have a problem with it. It's been going on apparently since November of 2018. How does the Border Patrol have my picture? I guess they know they have my passport image. I don't know.
They take mine every time we go. They have all these kiosks.
I know.
Now,
Yeah, you get your picture.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're a foreigner, and
I am.
You could be a threat. Not. You're not from Rhode Island.
No.
Like the rest of us.
Would that I was. I could get that.
What are they using? What images of us are they using? And in that case, then you do come up with that question of spoofing, because Face ID, facial recognition ID, is a lot different than just matching pictures.
Yeah.
That I have pictures in my Photos app on my Mac that originally the Mac thought Serenity was me.
Right.
Serenity Caldwell, we don't really look anything alike. Both of our eyes are kind of big, and maybe that's why it recognized that. But so then you kind of get a little bit mixed up in that spoofing thing, because just the iPhone 10 and 10s and 10s Max are a perfect example of it's using a bunch of different references to decide what your face looks like. So
remember when you set up Face ID, you are rotating the camera around, you're changing your angle. None of that data is available in this Homeland Security database.
Right. So what exactly are they using, and how is that a secure way to assume your face is there? I mean, I can imagine that a lot of issues will come up, and I certainly wouldn't want this to happen, but if there was a plane accident, somebody else took the flight because it was their sister or something like that,
right?
And then someone's missing, and they assume that it's one person when it's another person.
That's a good point. Could be
There's a lot of things that seem like they would go wrong with that kind of just like face matching instead of facial ID recognition.
Yeah. And even when law enforcement sometimes says, well, we use it for an initial match and to basically identify a suspect, for instance, but then we verify things on our own after that basically gives us a lead on a suspect, but they don't. That doesn't address the problem that if you have an interaction with a police officer who says that we would like to bring you in for questioning here and there, if you're smart, you lawyer up, and a lawyer is going to cost you how many thousands of dollars. And if someone just at your workplace or at your home or in your neighborhood or somewhere saw that, hey, you had to go into the police station to be talked to about a crime, how is that going to affect your job? How is it going to affect your life? And if it turns out that it all turned out because a local police department decided to use their Nintendo to do the police work for them and say, give us 500 people who might have possibly matched somewhat this picture that we got off of a blurry 7-Eleven security camera. That's not good enough. I mean, like Lory said, I mean, I've once or twice, the last time I got a facial mismatch was on Instagram when they showed me, it's, hey, so-and-so has tagged you in this photo, or you've been tagged in this photo. And it's like, no, that's actually a rather attractive young woman wearing a hat not entirely dissimilar from one of the hats I normally wear, but anybody would see that this is absolutely not. But do I have to now prove to somebody that actually I can prove because of my Netflix and YouTube browsing history that I was actually alone in my house and not 20 miles away?
There's also
we need legislation.
The nightmare scenario, because we know face recognition is not as effective with people with darker skin, of all the white people getting through and all the brown people getting stopped, saying, well, now we have to see your papers, please.
Yeah.
Or all the people with beards getting stopped. It's like that's not a good look for any airline.
You know, I would also say, and I'm not joking about this, that it bothers me that the only way to get out of being tagged with facial recognition is, okay, I'm going to be this stalwart about this. I'm actually going to be wearing a mask of some sort, something that covers my face wherever I go out. But you're probably not going to be allowed to go out in public. You're probably wearing something that covers your face because that will make you a suspicious person. And why does he not want to be recognized in public?
Well, I remember our engineer Colleen was designing a collar with invisible ultraviolet lights that you could wear. And I think this could easily be productized that blinded cameras. So you would just look like a glowing ball of light walking down the street. I think there's going to be a brisk market in those. I'm not kidding. I think in time, you're going to be able to buy these camera-defeating objects.
She's smuggling radium.
Until it becomes illegal to own one.
Yeah, right. And of course, you're immediately suspicious because you want to be private. What? Let's get prepare your picks of the week, because we are going to get to that right after I tell you about our sponsor, FreshBooks. It's accounting software. And I almost hate to say that, because it doesn't present as accounting software. It presents as a easy way to make invoices, to keep track of who you've invoiced, to send them notices if they don't pay right away, to make it easy for them to pay right in the invoice, because you can accept online payments as a FreshBooks customer. It doesn't feel like accounting software, but it is. It's actually an amazing thing, because in the process of all of that, sending invoices, receiving payments, keeping track of expenses, whether you put them in the invoices or not, you're actually doing your accounting, which gives you the ability to become a better business person, because you can make informed decisions. You'll know at any given time whether you're making money or not. And that's something as a freelancer I never knew till tax time. From kickoff to billing, FreshBooks supports your business every step of the way. And we want you to try it for free right now. FreshBooks self-employed accounting software is ridiculously easy to use. You can create and customize super professional looking invoices. That's how I used it. Log every hour if you bill for time with time tracking. They have a great app too, which will also do it, iOS or Android. You can get easy to understand reports, but also full accounting reports, the kind your accountant, your tax preparer will very much appreciate. You can schedule payments. Your clients can schedule payments. You can have automated invoicing, automated payment if you really want to make it easy. It automatically categorizes expenses, so filing taxes is simple. And FreshBooks is always evolving, always getting better. In fact, now you can use ACH payments, bank transfers, to get paid twice as fast. It's great for large invoices. There's a low transaction fee. Keep your finger on the pulse of your small business wherever you are. With the FreshBooks mobile app, you can snap photos of receipts, get them right into the invoices. You can create and send invoices. You can chat with clients. You can manage expenses all on your phone. It's that easy. 24 million people have used FreshBooks, including me. I loved it. It changed my life. Visit freshbooks.com/MacBreak. Use MacBreak Weekly in the How Did You Hear About Us section. You'll get 30 days free. I think it's something you got to try. It's so great. Freshbooks.com/MacBreak. It solves an immediate pain point. Oh, I hate doing invoices, but then you get a whole lot more, just kind of automatically. Freshbooks.com/MacBreak. Don't forget to put MacBreak Weekly in the How Did You Hear About Us section so you get 30 days free. We thank them for their support of MacBreak Weekly. We thank you for supporting us by using MacBreak Weekly as the offer code. And now, we are going to do picks of the week. Let me start with Lory Gill.
That's me. Are you sure you want this? Because you're probably going to end up buying one.
Oh, I know. I bought everything. I buy everything you tell me to buy.
Actually, this one is for a wooden case by the company called Kerf, Kerf. And
I like
not just
wooden
the
cases.
case itself,
yeah,
but everything they do. So they make iPhone cases and Android cases.
Oh, look at that.
They make skins, and they also have a charging block, which I've got my charging block plugged in around the corner. But they use sustainable wood and recycled materials, and even the phone case they sent me, it's cardboard and a cloth bag. That's all it comes in. There's no plastic.
Oh, that's nice.
So they really, I really want to tell people about this company because they make a really nice case. By the way, my favorite thing about this case, because cases are cases, right? But the buttons on these are just nice and big and puffy, and they stick out, and you can press them real easily. And that's a really nice thing to have on a case, and it feels good. This natural wood that it's made of. This one is made out of walnut. They use a variety of different styles of wood, but it's all sourced locally or with organizations that go out of their way to reclaim felled trees in the forests, and then dry them out and send them to places. So they're not just cutting down trees to make these cases and charging pads. They're actually using the environment as it exists. So it's pretty great.
So
the company
cool.
is great. So
I like the Qi charger, the wood Qi charger. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have the charging block. It works fantastic. It's the charging coils inside there are nice and big, so I can just toss my phone down, and it's only on a quarter of it, but it'll still catch it. So, and it looks really good.
They're clearly woodworkers, because you can get finishes with all kinds of crazy wood. Figured walnut, bocote, purple heart, African mahogany, ambrosia maple, canary wood, spalted maple. That is really neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really good. Yeah. And even if you don't need a new iPhone case, or you're not a fan of the thickness of the case, like some people are real minimalists and want a real thin case, just what the company does is great. And check it out and see if there's something else you want. I think they also do a MacBook skin, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I got to get that. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Good. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And they're from Pittsburgh. What's not to like?
They're from Pittsburgh.
Yep. Oh, and the Apple Pencil wood skin. I don't know if you clicked over to the wood skin section, but they make a pencil cover for your Apple Pencil, which is pretty clever.
And if you've got a little extra money, you can spend a few $100 on rare woods. Black Gabon ebony. That's only $639. Australian red mallee burl. It's $569. Figured rosewood. So that's Cocobolo, my favorite. $309.
Yeah, you get real
Crafted
fancy
by
with
John
it.
Gruber in his spare time.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's some woodworker here going, we could make a Cocobolo chi charger. We have the technology. Wow, that's really neat. Thank you. Lory Gill, everybody. imore.com. We didn't, Rich, probably mention the pick, but do you have something you'd like to pick besides, of course, the fabulous BBEdit?
Besides
it doesn't
that,
suck?
Yes. So recently, my wife and I got a Flashforge 3D printer.
Ooh, I'm jealous.
And it's our second one. The original one was a printer bot, and it's remarkable to see how far the usability and features of these things have advanced. It's got assisted leveling, which for 3D printing is just huge because it takes 99% of the pain out of getting the print surface level.
Which one did you get?
So we got the Guider 2. It's got a nice big print volume, so you can do things like print cylinders for sock knitting machines.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a
Is
thing
that what your
makes
wife does with it, or do you knit socks?
It's a thing that makes things that makes things.
What? So you make sock knitting parts?
So mostly as an experiment, she's printed out a circular sock knitting machine.
Nice. Wow.
So it's pretty remarkable.
Wow.
And yeah, it's fast. It works with a variety of materials. It's super easy to set up and print to. The Mac software is a little but it works.
Well, it's too bad you don't know somebody who could improve it.
Yeah, if only.
If only you had a few minutes a day.
Just a few extra minutes a day. If only we are more industrious.
Are you ever tempted to just write your own program?
All the time.
Yeah.
I'll look at something and I'll say, "Oh my goodness, I wish I had the time to write this."
I could do that so much better. I know exactly what I would do here.
Well, better is relative, right? It's like I would do it the way I would want it to work,
right?
Which might be better,
right,
or might not.
I want to learn a really good scripting language because I want to just automate all of the things.
Automate all the things.
Yeah. So you hear these stories all the time about programmers. I just read one on Reddit where a guy left work and they had found all his scripts, and he had scripts like, he pushes a button, it counts down 29 seconds and then connects to the coffee machine, which they had no idea had a wireless connection, network connection. and it starts making his coffee because it takes exactly 17 seconds for him to, and he would push the button, get up, start walking, and the coffee be ready when he got there and came back. Or if he's at work after 7 p.m., it sends a text to his wife. Just like they found all these scripts. And I think that would be kind of cool just to automate everything.
What were they written in?
Probably, well, who knows? I don't know. Probably, probably Python or maybe Bash. I don't know.
Right. It's like what you want to use is going to sort of
Yeah, what you want to do.
By what you want to do.
And then it requires interfaces to everything. So you have to make sure the coffee machine can talk to the network and understands whatever language you're using and all of that.
See, so if you learn ARM assembly, you can automate anything.
I think for a coffee machine, Java is the preferred language. But I might be wrong on that. Oh, no. So you like it? There. Flashforge.com.
Flashforge.com. Yeah, we're very happy with it.
Nice.
It's fast. It's easy to use.
Nice.
Just 3D printing, like many makerish things, can either be super smooth or super finicky.
Yeah.
And this has really just demonstrated the evolution from super smooth to super finicky. Wait, no, the other way around. Super finicky to super smooth.
It is super smooth. And if you ever need to make dental appliances of any kind, they have a special dental printing version of the Flashforge. Yeah. Make your own teeth. Rene, Ritchie, a pick of the week.
So I'm going back to one of my perennial favorites because they had a big new update, and that's Procreate. And they added the ability to do text and typesetting.
Nice.
So you could always sketch in it, you could always draw in it, you could always do all your design and your layout, but you had to do handwritten text, which for some people is super easy and for some people is quasi-nightmarish. But now you have sort of full command of the typography that's available, such as it is on iOS. It's still a weakness on iOS. A rumor has it Apple will be addressing that this year, and that'll be fantastic, especially because Procreate is ready and Photoshop is about to ship and all of those things. But just the ability to sort of add all the text you want in all the styles you want using the kind of engine and elegance that Procreate provides is one of the best things ever. It's just such a I like in using an iPad to finger painting with productivity, and there's something very old worldy about. It's not like picking up lead and putting it into a press, or using a brush, but there's just something about putting stuff exactly where you want it and moving it around and making that perfect layout that I just find immensely satisfying.
I just found out because we had Mom on iOS today for the show for Mother's Day. My mother. Just found out that she uses Procreate, and in fact, that's what she used. In fact, she's going to like the text thing because this is her Easter. She uses it to create cards. This is her Easter card.
That's awesome.
It says, "Our nest eggs may not be the same size, but we're all spring chickens. Happy Easter." I don't know what that means, but yeah, she loves Procreate. She'll be happy to know that you can use the text tool now.
It's just awesome. James Kuda and the entire team, they're just so thoughtful about not only what they add, but how they add it. Yeah. That's always the best thing for that.
Very nice. Andy?
My pick of the week, it's kind of a lateral thing. I did buy a brand new MacBook over the weekend.
Wait a minute. That ain't no brand new Mac.
Well, it's new to me.
Did Daisy get a hold of that? What that looks like a...
This is a 2008, 2009 MacBook 4, 1. Not last Sunday. Sunday was the first. It was the third Sunday in April, which made it the first MIT flea market of the year.
Oh boy!
It runs the third Sunday of the month, April through October. And I bought this because it said for parts or repair, and for $10.
Oh, nice.
And one little trick is that when you see there was a pile of them, and actually a lot of different sellers had, I don't know what it is about white MacBooks, but they had lots of people had lots of them, and some of them will have little post-its that says, "Oh, well, bad backlight," or a DVD drive does not work. The ones that you kind of want to look for are the ones that say for parts or repair, because it might mean that it was so screwed up that they couldn't even quantify it on a post-it note, or it could mean that they just didn't have time to test it and they don't want to take responsibility for saying it works when it doesn't. And well, I'll be darned, it works perfectly fine. So I got a $10, and it has a MagSafe connector, so I already had plenty of chargers that worked just fine in it. And so I fired it up and tested it up yesterday, and I was really taken with how different. I had my modern MacBook, or excuse me, my 2015 MacBook on my lap. I put that on the side table, and I was really taken with how different the world was. So here is, and this was remember that this was Apple's budget Mac. This was their $1,000.
That's
Mac
why there's
students.
So many of them. Schools use those crazy.
Right. pretty much.
Yeah.
And so you realize that, okay, well, what do you know? You have a whole variety of ports built right in there.
Look at that. Including FireWire.
Including fire. It's unfortunately it's gigabit Ethernet, but it is the old FireWire, FireWire 400 mini DVI slot for external video up to 1920 by whatever. This will probably clean up very well. A keyboard that feels like even much as good as like my desktop keyboard almost, even though it's relatively low profile. The only thing that really threw me was I thought that the trackpad was broken, but only before I realized, oh, that's right. There's an actual separate button you have to press for the clicks. You can't, there is no 3D touch on this thing. Right now it's running macOS 10.5. I can upgrade it to 10.7 macOS Lion without breaking any of Apple's rules. There are tricks to upgrading it, I've read, above that. The only thing that's actually wrong with it is the battery just does not hold a charge. But again, here's another blast from the past. It is a replaceable battery.
Yep.
I can actually replace it myself. The problem is, though, you do need to have like a special esoteric tool to get it open.
It looks like a nickel.
Yeah. So
that cost you, how much that cost you?
Yeah. Well, it cost me,
25 cents, huh?
It may look like a quarter, but the guy at the MIT flea said it might void the warranty if I didn't get the special $90 one. But yeah, so this is the only part that's broken, and I can get a replacement for anywhere from like $15 for a really sketchy one to $50 or $60 for one by a more reputable maker. But that's it's $10 is cheap as free when it comes to like a usable MacBook. If it didn't work, I was going to consider like gutting it and using it, taking out the display and using it for something else, using for some sort of a maker project. But but as it's working, I don't know whether I'm going to upgrade it to Lion and just replace the battery and just have it as a permanently installed Mac on like an end table of the living room, or maybe I'll just install like Arch Linux on it and just use it as a Linux box. But it is it's nice to have something that's this useful for $10. And also there you go. Holy cow! It has some sort of a dollar. So it has like a dollar bill reader or something.
Yeah, I think it's a bill reader. Yeah, I think that's what that is.
I'll stop. I put some baloney in there, but yeah, it's so I would. I mean, I'm not recommending people run out and buy like old MacBooks, but they are. If you have
the speed, I mean, does it run at a reasonable speed?
You know what? It runs. Running on 10.5. It doesn't seem laggy at all.
Isn't that weird?
It had, of course, whoever last owned it didn't wipe it before they got rid of it. So it had a full suite of apps on it. And I was using the old version of Safari. I was using the old version of iTunes, the old version of Word. They were all working just fine. I'm sure that if I did do a hack to get it to run Mojave or something more modern, that's when it would really start to slow down mightily, because it's not built for these old Core Duo processors. But it doesn't mean that there's nothing you can do with this, particularly if you want to start experimenting with other operating systems and stuff like that. So if someone has at a flea market, keep an eye out for these. They are kind of cool, even just to show the kids what a real laptop used to be like. Again, I can't get over the fact that once again, this was the budget Mac. This was what you got if you walked in and said, "Give me the cheapest Mac you can possibly have." And there's so many things on here that I wish my $2,000 MacBook had.
I think I have one of those in my garage. It was my daughter's in high school.
Yeah, I think that was the first Mac that I had.
Yeah,
I think that was my first Mac. Was that year and everything?
2008. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Apple? They build these things to last. You know.
Do you, Rich? You probably have a lab of old Macs, right? So you can test BBEdit and different.
Not as much as we used to. We used to have old hardware, but as we sort of started supporting newer OSs and Apple started aging older hardware off, it became less necessary.
Yeah, I guess so.
And also, hardware is really less of an issue for us specifically.
Oh.
So
text editor works
on my machine,
wherever you are. That's the beauty of it. Rich Siegel, great to have you. Everybody should have a copy of BBEdit. Go to barebones.com. You can try it free for 30 days, or now get it in the Mac App Store. Isn't that nice? Also a 30-day trial. Yeah, it's great to have you. It's we always enjoy it. And no parrots today, which was odd, but are they out for cleaning or?
Nope, they're right here, being quiet, behaving themselves disturbingly well.
What
Proof
watch?
of life, Rich. Proof of life.
What watch are you wearing today on the show?
I have a third Series 3 Apple Watch.
Oh, I saw your watch winder in the background there. I thought you were wearing some automatic watch. Some classic. Here comes the parrot. Look at that.
So beautiful.
Oh, is that an African blue? What is she?
This is Bruno. He's an African gray.
Gray, I mean, yeah. Blue gray. Yeah, very pretty. Hi, Bruno. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Bruno.
Mm-hmm. Very pretty. Thank you, Rich.
See, as I suspected, I don't think Bare Bones PR has authorized Bruno to speak to the media. So
he has not.
They live 100 more plus years, right?
The macaws will live that long. Grays typically last. Listen to me, live about 40 to 60 years.
That's a commitment when you get a gray.
Yep.
You're there for the long haul. Lory Gill, senior important person at imore.com. She's managing editor.
I have no parrots or macaws or anything though.
But she does have a rock and roll band called Sick Burn. Catch them in a Sacramento dive near you. Sometime soon, no doubt.
Yep.
I could tell you sang last night a little bit.
No, actually, this time it's the
it's the pollen. Okay.
The pollen. It's getting to me. Yeah.
Poor Lory. Oh man, I know. My wife suffers from that. It's so hard. Feel better. Thank you, Andy Ihnatko. Boston Public Radio's Andy Ihnatko, WGBH Boston. Thursday this week?
Tomorrow, actually, Wednesday at 1:15. As usually, I'll tweet out the time and a link to where you can stream it live or stream it later.
Nice. Thanks for joining us. And Rene, Ritchie, I hope it dries up in your neck of the woods.
Thank you, Leo.
Yeah, imore.com. And congratulations once again on 100,000 subscribers for the Vector podcast on YouTube. Go to imore.com/vector or find it on YouTube and watch. Will you do a show today, you think, or are you going to wait?
I don't think I'll have time to do one today, but I'm hoping to get one up tomorrow.
Okay. We'll look for it. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday around about 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That would be 1800 UTC. If you want to stop by and watch it, you can. We got a live stream, actually audio and video at twit.tv/live. If you're watching it live, you should chat live with our chatters at irc.twit.tv. They're an important part of the show. You can also visit us in studio. Just email tickets at twit.tv. We'll make sure you have a chair put out for you. If you can't watch live or be here live, you can always get on-demand versions of our show right at our website, twit.tv/iOS, or wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, if you subscribe, you won't have to worry about when we're on. You'll just get it automatically. It's 1800 UTC. I did the math wrong again. 1800 UTC. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Oh no, that's the wrong out. I have to say it right. Time to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye.